Hello, everybody, and welcome back for a very special Independence Day celebration Shirley podcast episode. Jason, do you know the date that the Declaration of Independence was ratified?
How about July 4th, 1776?
Wrong answer. I'm sorry. That
What?
is incorrect. No, there was a big fight leading up to the Declaration of Independence. I mean, we had 13 colonies. Some were for voting for independence, some were against it. There was a big fight, but it was on July 2nd, today, the day of this podcast, July 2nd, that it was actually some colonies to switch their position. South Carolina was like, nope, we're gonna vote for independence. And so on July 2nd, 1776, that was the day that independence was adopted by 12 affirmative votes and 1 abstention. They formally said we are going to sever our political ties with Great Britain. As a matter of fact, John Adams wrote to his wife the following day and predicted that July 2nd would become a great American holiday. It is only because the people didn't know until it was formally adopted 2 days later on July 4th that became what we now celebrate as our Independence Day. But it was actually adopted 2 days before. Today in celebration.
Happy July 2nd, D.
Yeah, happy July 2nd. You got your fireworks ready to go?
I'm ready to blow up some crap.
As the Brits call it, the Rebellion Day. I don't. So I am here today not to talk to you about the independence of the United States, but to just bring you guys a special episode. This is a special edition episode. We have a great Patreon family. If you guys are interested in becoming a part of our Patreon family, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Shirley Podcast. For as little as $5 a month, you get access to all of our special Patreon episodes where we cover one-hit wonders and other kind of novelty songs. You even managed to sneak Mariah Carey in there on me, which I was none too happy about, but it's still a great episode.
It is.
And
every song has a story, D.
Every song has a story. That's right.
And we like telling those stories.
That's what I'm here to do today, is tell a story. What we've started doing on some of these Patreon episodes is you started this. You're like, okay, D, I've got a song that I'm going to tell you about, and you have to try to guess what it is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way we do our top fives. You know, we lead it in, and that's what I'm going to do with today's episode. I'm going to talk to you about an American musician who is a chart-topping musician and is responsible for one of the most iconic recordings in all of movie history, and he got no credit for it. As a matter of fact, I would venture to say that 99% of the people who are familiar with this recording are not familiar with who recorded it. And it is a great story. And as it turns out, it's a guy from Oklahoma, right here where we are.
All right. Yippee-ki-yay.
It was 1951. Shelby stood anxiously at the Warner Brothers recording studio, not sure about what was going to happen next. He had only recently moved to California in hopes of making it big, and so far, he hadn't had a whole lot of success. He was far from home on his second marriage and had a young boy he had grown to adore, depending on him. But little did he know the profound impact that this upcoming recording session would have. 100 years ago, the population of Erick, Oklahoma was 971, which is about 38 more than its population is today. And in April of 1921, that population increased by 1 when Bill and Ora welcomed their third son into the world. Shelby would go on to learn horse riding and fiddle playing from Bill, and so from a young age he would ride in rodeos, and at 15 he formed a band called the Plainview Melody Boys, who would periodically play on station KASA in Elk City, Oklahoma. When Shelby was only 19, he married his first wife, Melva Miller, herself only 17 at the time. Shelby became close with Melva's young cousin Roger, taught him how to play the guitar, and bought him his first fiddle. Roger Miller would grow up to become a successful country musician himself. You probably know his song, King of the Road,
Trailers for sale or rent.
which was a #1 Hot Country single and reached #4 on the Hot 100. But this seed that shall be planted would not be the biggest mark he would make on the world of entertainment. Though he tried to enlist for World War II, his rodeo injuries kept him out of the military, so instead he worked as a welder for oil drillers. Then, in 1946, at the encouragement of Ernest Tubb, he decided to leave the oil field, leave Oklahoma, and pursue his love of music. He recorded his first single, moved to Fort Worth, Texas, and for 3 years he toured the South, but was ultimately unable to hit it big. So, in 1950, he brought his second wife, Edna, and her young son, Gary, to Hollywood in hopes of establishing himself as an actor or a singer. But after a year, he had only had a handful of parts, mostly uncredited. And that included the movie he was about to record for. Uncredited for the part he played in the movie, and uncredited for his part in the audio track that he was about to record. Yes, uncredited for the part that would become one of the most iconic recordings in history. Now, as it turned out, Shelby would ultimately be a success as a singer and as an actor. Just a year later, in 1952, he would land his first big role in the movie High Noon as Ben Miller, one of the gang who would face off against Gary Cooper. A year after that, 2 songs that he had written would become hits for Teresa Brewer and Hank Snow. Then, in 1958, he had 2 career-making events. First, he was cast as Peter Nolan in the series Rawhide, a role he would play for the next 8 years. Second, was that he had recorded a song that would be his biggest chart topper, going gold in just 3 weeks and hitting #1 on the Hot 100. The song?
It was a one-eyed, one-horn, flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horn, flying purple people eater.
It has sold well over 100 million copies to date, but I am saying today that his uncredited contribution to one of his earliest movies surpasses even this in its impact on the entertainment world. His acting career didn't stop with Rawhide either. He was in more than 60 movies and television roles, including The War Wagon with John Wayne, The Outlaw Josie Wales with Clint Eastwood, Silverado with Kevin Kline, Kevin Costner, and Danny Glover, and Hoosiers, where he was literally sitting next to Gene Hackman on the bench, helping coach the team. He was also one of the original cast members of Hee Haw, which he wrote the theme for. He also had quite a bit of success as a recording artist as well. He had several more gold records. He won a CMA in 1968, Songwriter of the Year in 1992. He also won the Western Heritage Award for 9 years in a row for his television work. But I maintain it was his 1951 recording that will be his most lasting legacy, and most people don't even know he was the man responsible. So, what was Shelby Woolley, who went by Sheb, about to record on that fateful day? Well, he was just one of a handful of actors they had called back that day to do some recording they needed to finish up the movie Distant Drums. Sheb did 6 different takes, and the last 3 ended up in the movie. Then all 6 takes went into the Warner Brothers vault, only to be used again in 1952 and in 1953, 3 times in 1954, including the Judy Garland version of A Star is Born, twice in 55, and again, over and over for the next 20 years. But nobody noticed. Nobody except a young film production grad student at USC named Ben. In his studies, Ben had noticed Sheb's work and was impressed. So impressed that he and his buddy Richard would record it from A Star is Born just to put it in their 1974 student film, The Scarlet Blade. Ben would graduate the next year, and then 2 years after that, he would get his first credited job as a sound designer. This job allowed him to do research in several sound libraries, including the one at Warner Brothers, where he was able to find Sheb's original recordings. And it was this discovery that led to its proliferation in the 1980s, 90s, and on into the 21st century. His friend Richard used it in his movies as well, including Poltergeist, Batman Returns, Planet of the Apes, and Madagascar. Other sound editors became aware of Sheb's recordings and used it in their films as well. Disney films, Spielberg films. Joe Dante has used it in at least 5 of his films. Peter Jackson was so impressed that he deliberately cranked the volume when Sheb's voice was used in Lord of the Rings. And when Quentin Tarantino learned the significance of this recording while it was being put into Reservoir Dogs, he called a break and had his sound crew come and listen to its first appearance way back in Distant Drums. In fact, since Ben discovered Sheb's recordings back in 1977 while finding sounds for a new movie called Star Wars, Sheb's voice has been used in over 130 films and television episodes, and Ben Burt found it in a canister marked, quote, "Man getting bit by an alligator and he screams," end quote. Because it wasn't Sheb's singing voice, but his screaming voice that he recorded on that faithful day back in 1951. And though Sheb played Private Jessup in Distant Drums, it was a memorable moment in a film 2 years later called The Charge at Feather River, where Ben Burt first heard Sheb's scream as another young private is shot in the leg, a young private named Wilhelm, which is why, if you haven't guessed it already, he named it the Wilhelm Scream. And that is the story, as best I can tell.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. I know it from Star Wars for sure, Return of the Jedi for sure,
Indiana Jones.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, without a doubt.
It's iconic.
That's good, man. You did some research on that. That's awesome.
Well, it was just crazy when you find out that the guy responsible for the one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater and the theme to Hee Haw is the guy who did the Wilhelm Scream.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I'm going to have to go back and watch Hoosiers just to figure this guy out. So.
Okay, guys, that's going to be it for our special episode. But we hope you'll have a great 4th of July with your family, a safe and fun 4th of July celebrating the independence. But join us back here next week. Dee, we're going to have the top 5 songs of 1979.
Oh my gosh. 78 was fantastic. I can't wait to see what 79 brings us.
A lot of great pop songs, a lot of great rock from that era. Got some country, got some disco. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Come on back for that. We'll see you back here next week.
We ought to do our impressions. Oh, man.